When most people picture Native American homes, one image dominates: the tipi, a tall cone rising against the plains, a symbol repeated in movies, textbooks, and childhood imagination. But what if that image barely scratches the surface of the truth? What if some of the most advanced, climate-controlled homes on this continent weren't above ground at all, but beneath it? Across the plains, the woodlands, and the southwest, entire communities lived in dwellings carved into the earth. Structures so stable, comfortable, and efficient that modern architects study them today with genuine astonishment. These weren't crude holes in the ground. They were thermal regulators, storm shelters, gathering halls, and engineering marvels, built with nothing more than hand tools, observation, and a deep understanding of how the earth behaves. From massive earth lodges that sheltered entire clans, to pit houses hidden beneath snowbanks. From the circular chambers of the southwest to cliff-etched dwellings high above canyon floors. A secret architectural world existed long before modern foundations, insulation, or blueprints. These underground homes challenge everything we think we know about indigenous architecture. They reveal a level of design that didn't fight the environment. It understood it so well that the landscape itself became part of the home. If you thought Native American engineering peaked with the tipi, prepare to see a side of history that's been buried. Literally. Subscribe now, because every day we uncover the technologies, structures, and ideas that once shaped entire civilizations, and still hold answers for the world we live in today. For most people, the tipi has become the single image that represents Native American life. It appears in paintings, school lessons, and movies, as if every tribe lived the same way. The truth is far more complex and infinitely more impressive. The tipi was a brilliant invention, but it belonged to specific nations of the Great Plains, whose lives revolved around mobility. It was designed to move quickly, to withstand wind, and to follow the rhythm of buffalo migrations. Light poles, hides, and a conical frame made it perfect for a people who traveled often and needed shelter that could be raised or taken down in minutes. But while the tipi excelled at movement, it was never the dominant home of all indigenous cultures. In fact, most communities across North America lived in structures so different it's almost shocking how little attention they receive. Some built longhouses, stretching more than 100 feet. Others carved entire living quarters into cliffs. And many, across plains, forests, and deserts, built homes that sank directly into the earth. That last category is the one history tends to overlook: the pit houses, earth lodges, and subterranean chambers that formed the backbone of everyday life for countless nations. These underground and partially underground homes weren't temporary stops. They were long-term, stable dwellings designed to withstand heat, cold, storms, and time. They were engineered solutions to climates that could be brutally hot in summer and painfully cold in winter. The tipi couldn't offer that. An underground home could. What's remarkable is how versatile these structures were. In the north, they served as winter strongholds. In the southwest, they became ceremonial centers. In the plains, they stood as fortified villages. Their designs were as varied as the landscapes themselves. The tipi deserves respect, but the underground homes reveal an entire architectural world many never learned about. And this is where the real story begins. Step inside an earth lodge, and the first thing you'll notice is the temperature. No matter what the weather is doing outside, scorching heat or biting cold, the air inside stays steady, calm, almost unreal. These homes weren't accidents. They were masterpieces of engineering, built by nations like the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, who turned soil, wood, and grass into one of the most efficient dwelling types ever created. Earth lodges were massive, often reaching 40 to 60 feet in diameter. Their builders carved a shallow, circular pit into the ground, then raised a sturdy timber frame over it, thick cottonwood posts arranged like the ribs of a giant animal. Over this frame, they layered branches, grasses, and finally a thick blanket of packed earth. That earth wasn't just covering, it was insulation. It absorbed sunlight during the day, releasing warmth slowly at night. In winter, the soil shielded the interior from the worst of the cold, while the underground foundation kept temperatures from plunging. Ventilation was calculated with remarkable precision. A central smoke hole above the hearth allowed heat to rise while drawing in fresh air from lower vents near the floor. The layout prevented smoke from choking the room, while keeping warmth trapped where people slept, cooked, and gathered. But earth lodges weren't just functional. They were communal. Dozens lived inside one structure, each family with its own defined space, all sharing a central fire. These were villages, neighborhoods, gathering places, and winter fortresses all in one. Thick walls made them resilient against storms. The partially underground design made them almost immune to extreme seasonal swings. To modernize, they look simple, yet architects and engineers studying their thermal performance find that they outperform many modern homes in energy efficiency. These structures weren't primitive. They were perfectly adapted, deeply intentional, and built to last. The Southwest holds some of the most breathtaking underground and semi-underground structures in North America. Homes and chambers carved with such precision that they still stand after centuries of heat, storms, and shifting desert winds. These weren't simple shelters. They were planned environments, built with a level of care that turned bare earth and stone into complex living systems. One of the most striking examples is the kiva, a circular, sunken chamber used by Puebloan communities. From above, a kiva looks modest, but step inside and you realize it's a perfectly engineered room designed for both comfort and purpose. The floor sits well below ground level, where temperatures remain stable regardless of the season. Thick stone walls keep out desert heat during the day and release warmth during the night. Even the air inside is managed by an ingenious system. A fresh air vent near the floor feeds the fire, while a chimney opening above carries smoke out. This natural airflow creates a steady circulation that keeps the room warm and breathable, without a single mechanical device. Then there are the semi-subterranean pit houses used throughout the Southwest, long before kivas and multi-story pueblos existed. These homes were dug into the earth, roofed with timber and mud plaster, and entered through ladders. Despite the harsh desert, inside these pit houses temperatures remained comfortable year-round, proving that insulation doesn't always require thick walls. Sometimes the ground itself does the work. But perhaps the most dramatic subterranean innovation came from the ancestral Puebloans, who carved homes directly into canyon walls. Cliff dwellings offered powerful protection from both weather and attack. Their recessed placement shielded them from the midday sun, while capturing gentle warmth during the evening. These rock alcoves functioned like natural thermostats. In all these structures, the same principle shines. People shaped their homes to fit the land, not the other way around. And by doing so, they achieved stability and comfort without the need for fuel, machinery, or constant maintenance. To understand why underground dwellings were so successful, you have to see them not as shelters, but as systems. Every detail served a purpose. Every choice, placement, depth, materials, airflow, was shaped by careful observation of how the land behaved across seasons. These weren't structures built to resist the environment, they were designed to work with it, turning natural forces into allies. Temperature control was the first challenge. Above ground, walls take the full impact of scorching summers and freezing winters. Below ground, the story changes. Soil acts like a giant thermal blanket. It absorbs heat slowly and loses it slowly, smoothing out the extreme spikes of the surrounding climate. In the plains, where storms could arrive without warning, this stability meant safety. In the southwest, where the sun baked the earth relentlessly, subterranean rooms stayed cool, without constant ventilation or shade. Water management was equally advanced. Many pit houses and earth lodges were built with slight inward slopes toward drainage points, preventing floodwater from pooling inside. Some communities dug their homes into slopes or river terraces that naturally shed water during rainstorms. In cliff dwellings, rainfall followed predictable paths along the rock face, allowing residents to collect runoff in jars or channels without exposing themselves to the elements. Airflow was handled with surprising sophistication. Fresh air vents positioned close to the floor worked together with smoke holes in the roof to create a steady upward pull. This circulation removed smoke, brought in oxygen, and regulated moisture. No fans, no chimneys. Just a perfect understanding of how warm air rises and cool air settles. Food storage integrated seamlessly into these designs. Cool corners, pits lined with clay, and alcoves carved into stone kept beans, maize, and dried meat stable through long seasons. It's tempting to see these homes as simple, but simplicity was the result of refinement. Every angle, every measurement, every material solved a problem. These underground structures weren't accidents of history. They were solutions designed through observation, repetition, and precision. Walk across the prairies, through the woodlands, or along the canyon rims of the Southwest, and you might never guess what once lay beneath your feet. The mounds, depressions, and faint outlines in the soil are the last quiet reminders of homes that shaped entire communities. These underground dwellings may not dominate textbooks or monuments, but their legacy runs far deeper than their remains suggest. For centuries, they provided stability in regions with some of the harshest climates on the continent. They protected families from violent storms, blistering heat, severe winters, and sudden environmental shifts. They weren't temporary or experimental. They were reliable anchors for generations. And even though many of these homes have vanished, the concepts behind them live on. Architects studying energy efficiency look at earth lodges and pit houses as early examples of passive temperature control, structures that regulate heat without the need for constant fuel. Sustainability experts examine how underground homes use local materials without stripping landscapes bare. Engineers note the intelligent airflow patterns that kept indoor environments healthy long before modern ventilation existed. But the legacy isn't only technical. These dwellings show a relationship with the land built on familiarity rather than force. Each structure responded to its specific region: plains winds, desert sun, woodland storms, canyon acoustics. The builders didn't try to impose a single architectural style across every environment. They adapted, shape-shifting their engineering to match the demands of each place. What survives today are the lessons: how to build stability through precision, how to use the earth itself as a foundation, and how to create comfort without excess. These underground homes represent a chapter of history that hasn't been fully told. A chapter filled with ideas that modern building practices are only now beginning to rediscover. The tipi is iconic, but what lies beneath reveals a legacy far more innovative, layered, and enduring. If you take a modern thermal camera and point it at an underground dwelling site, even centuries after the home has collapsed, you'll notice something incredible. The earth still holds the temperature difference. That's how effective these structures were at managing climate. Long before insulation, thermostats, or double-pane windows, native builders created living spaces that balanced heat and cold with almost mathematical accuracy. The secret began with depth. Even a few feet below the surface, soil maintains a stable temperature throughout the year. In summer, it stays cool. In winter, it holds the warmth absorbed from earlier seasons. By sinking the floor into the ground and surrounding the frame with earth, these homes avoided the violent temperature swings above the surface. Instead of fighting heat waves or cold snaps, they rode out the year in a calm, steady climate. The roofs added another layer of control. Thick coverings of earth, grass, and timber acted like natural insulation. They reduced heat loss in winter and blocked sun exposure in summer. The design was so efficient that people could sit comfortably inside an earth lodge while snowstorms roared overhead, or rest in a pit house at midday without feeling the desert sun pressing down. Ventilation was equally brilliant. Fresh air openings were placed low to the ground, while smoke holes stood high at the center or near the roofline. This arrangement harnessed the natural rise of warm air, pulling cool air inward and pushing used air out. It prevented trapped heat, controlled smoke, and kept the home breathable. No fans, no ducts, just the physics of rising and sinking air, used with exact timing. Openings faced strategic directions: south for winter warmth, northeast for summer cooling, or toward consistent winds that improved airflow. Builders learned these patterns not from charts, but from generations of watching how the land behaved. These dwellings weren't just shelters. They were climate managers. And even today, engineers study them to understand how to design homes that remain comfortable without overconsumption of energy. Life inside an underground dwelling wasn't cramped, dark, or primitive. It was organized, efficient, and surprisingly comfortable. These homes were designed not only to shelter people, but also to protect food, tools, and daily routines in a way that kept families secure through every season. Food storage was one of the greatest advantages of living below the surface. The cool, stable temperatures created ideal conditions for preserving dried corn, beans, squash, smoked meat, and roots. Builders carved pits directly into the floor or shaped storage alcoves into the surrounding earth. Some pits were lined with clay to control moisture, while others were sealed with woven lids or flat stones to keep out rodents and insects. What modern kitchens achieve with refrigeration, these homes accomplished through the simple reliability of soil and airflow. Safety was another hidden strength. Thick walls of earth and timber protected families from storms, prairie fires, and extreme cold. In regions where conflict was a risk, a semi-subterranean home was far easier to defend than a raised structure. The entrance, often a single ladder through the roof, could be secured quickly. Outside sounds carried clearly through the ground, giving early warning of approaching danger. Inside, daily life unfolded in a structured communal rhythm. A central hearth provided light and warmth, with smoke drawn upward through carefully positioned openings. Sleeping areas lined the perimeter. Workspaces clustered around the fire where tasks like grinding corn, repairing clothing, or preparing tools took place. Even with many people sharing a single lodge or pit house, the design created a natural flow that prevented overcrowding. These homes were not temporary stops. People lived, cooked, stored food, raised families, and held gatherings inside them for generations. The earth itself acted as protection, storage, and climate control. In a world where survival depended on stability, underground living offered something rare: reliability, season after season. What made these underground homes extraordinary wasn't just their strength or comfort. It was how precisely they answered the demands of the land. There was no one-size-fits-all design. Every region shaped its own version, molded by the soil, the wind, the seasons, and the resources available. This wasn't guesswork. It was architecture guided by long observation and constant refinement. In the plains, where winds could flatten surface structures, homes sank into the earth for stability. Builders chose river terraces, gentle slopes, or naturally elevated ground that drained well during rain. Timber frames were angled to resist pressure from shifting soil, while entrances often faced away from prevailing storms. These decisions weren't decorative. They were survival strategy embedded in every beam. In the northern woodlands, dwellings took advantage of the insulating qualities of deep forest soil. Builders used layers of bark, branches, and loam to regulate moisture while allowing the home to breathe. The surrounding trees acted as natural windbreaks, reducing heat loss and preventing the structure from being smothered by heavy snow. The Southwest required an entirely different approach. Desert floors could flood in sudden storms, so pit houses were dug into higher ground or built against rocky slopes. Cliff dwellings took this a step further, carved into alcoves that offered shade, protection from rain, and perfect vantage points. The rock faces themselves stabilized the temperature, while the natural overhangs sheltered the interiors from direct sun. In each of these regions, the builders didn't force the environment to adapt to them. They adapted their architecture to the environment. The soil, the sunlight, the wind patterns, the slope of the land, all of it informed the structure's shape and function. What emerges from these dwellings is a remarkable truth. The land wasn't a challenge to overcome, it was the blueprint. And those who built within it understood that matching a home to its surroundings created not just shelter, but long-term security. What holds an underground house together isn't luck, it's structure. And the structural systems behind these dwellings show a level of engineering that surprises even modern builders. Every element was chosen to bear weight, stabilize soil, and create a home that stayed standing through storms, floods, and decades of seasonal change. The backbone of many earth lodges and pit houses was the timber frame. Builders selected trees not at random, but based on flexibility, strength, and how well the wood handled moisture. Cottonwood, elm, juniper, and pine were shaped into posts and beams arranged in a circular pattern. This circular design wasn't aesthetic. It distributed weight evenly, preventing collapse under heavy earth or snow. Next came the secondary framework, smaller poles laid atop the main structure like ribs. These poles interlocked at precise angles, creating a dome-like shape capable of supporting thousands of pounds of soil. A flat roof might sag. A dome held firm. Over the wooden frame came layers of brush, grass, and sod. This wasn't thrown together. Builders used specific grasses that resisted rot, held moisture without molding, and bonded well with soil when packed. Each layer served a purpose. Brush created air pockets for insulation. Grass bound the layers together. Sod locked everything in place and shed water away from the structure. The final coat of packed earth added weight, but weight was the point. The mass stabilized the temperature, strengthened the walls, and anchored the structure to the land. Ventilation systems added another layer of engineering. Air entered low and exited high, creating natural circulation without weakening the dome. Even entrances were calculated. Roof entry ladders avoided cutting into the walls. Side entrances in some regions were reinforced with extra posts and angled tunnels to prevent cave-ins. Nothing was improvised. These homes balanced load distribution, soil mechanics, insulation, and airflow with precision usually associated with modern engineering. They weren't just dugouts. They were carefully crafted machines built to last. If you look at today's housing problems, rising energy costs, unstable climates, inefficient insulation, it becomes clear that many modern homes struggle with the very challenges underground dwellings solved centuries ago. Engineers and architects now spend millions trying to regulate indoor temperatures, reduce heating bills, and design buildings that don't collapse under environmental stress. Yet beneath our feet lies a forgotten set of techniques that handled these issues with no electricity, no machinery, and no synthetic materials. The first lesson is thermal stability. Underground homes maintained steady temperatures because they followed the natural patterns of the earth rather than resisting them. Modern earth-sheltered homes mimic this with impressive results, proving that the principle still works. Put more of the structure into the ground, and the environment does half the work of heating and cooling. For generations, the story of Native American housing was simplified into a single image, the teepee rising against the horizon. But beneath that familiar silhouette lies a hidden architectural world, one built under the soil, carved into canyon walls, shaped by the wind, and perfected through countless seasons. These underground dwellings weren't side notes or primitive shelters. They were full-scale engineering achievements that delivered stability, security, and comfort in ways our modern world still struggles to match. Think about what these homes accomplished. They held steady temperatures during the coldest winters and hottest summers. They stored food without electricity. They sheltered families from storms, fires, and sudden threats. They used materials that didn't harm the land and required almost no maintenance. They lasted for decades, sometimes centuries. And they did all this without concrete, steel, or machines pushing the earth aside.